So welcome everyone, and thank you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy days to join us for this webinar on childhood bereavement for Children's Grief Awareness Day. Like I said, I love to hear where people are coming from. So if you would, type your name, where you're joining us from in the chat so we could see where folks are coming from. I'm Evelyn Moon. I am the Director of Education at Good Grief. I'm coming to you from our Princeton, New Jersey office here at the center, and I support all things Good Grief schools at our organization. And part of my role is to run our community webinar series. Our community webinars run every month from September through June, and they're offered at no cost to our Good Grief community. So we source out experts in the field of grief, loss, bereavement, and resilience building. And we come to you wherever you are, bringing new strategies, ideas, and we want to foster our online community building. So whether you're watching this live on Zoom right now, or as a recording on our YouTube channel, this session was made for you. So this is Good Grief's mission. Good Grief builds resilience in children, strengthens families, and empowers communities to grow from loss and adversity. I'll go into more details about how we do just that in a moment. So these are today's topics. First, we're going to talk about what is Children's Grief Awareness Day and why is it so important. We'll look at the ways Good Grief has grown to meet the needs of grievers here in New Jersey and beyond. We'll learn some tips for supporting children and teenagers through grief and loss. And we'll be part of a panel discussion with some of our Good Grief kids and a Good Grief facilitator. So I told you we'd bring you experts. Doesn't get more expert than that with Good Grief than our Good Grief kids and one of our very own volunteer facilitators. And we'll explore the ways that you can get involved in supporting grieving children and families here at Good Grief. So Children's Grief Awareness Day. A lot of people don't know about Children's Grief Awareness Day. This day is observed the third Thursday in November every year. This is the Thursday right before the US holiday of Thanksgiving. And the mission of Children's Grief Awareness Day is to help grieving children feel less alone and more supported, because it wants to change the culture surrounding children and grief. And this change can happen by helping others understand the impact of death on children and helping them recognize the need for support. So Children's Grief Awareness Day began in 2008 as a result of kids. It was a collaboration between school children in Northwest Pennsylvania and the Highmark Caring Place. So these students wanted to do more to bring attention to what they had learned their grieving classmates had to cope with. They wanted their peers to know that they weren't alone and that they weren't being forgotten. So out of these beginnings, the event grew. Since that time, thousands of individuals and organizations have worked to raise awareness of grieving children, to change the culture in order to make death and grief a topic that can be spoken of openly and compassionately. And Good Grief is proud to be part of this movement, making this positive change. So why is it important? Children have been referred to as the forgotten mourners. Many times people do not know how to talk to or be present for a child who is grieving. And historically, researchers have proposed that a child's understanding of death and their ability to grieve was determined by their cognitive maturity. And for many years, parents and professionals both believed that a child's inability to fully understand death actually hindered them from mourning or feeling grief. But fortunately, this is changing. We know children experience grief beginning at a very young age, and they need developmentally appropriate support. Childhood bereavement is all around us, whether we realize it or not. So this is from Judy's House, the JAG Institute, and they estimate that 1 in 14 children will experience the death of a parent or sibling by age 14. Mind you, this does not take into account the other types of caregivers a child could have in their life. This is just the parents or the sibling. And they say that this number doubles by age 25. That is 13.2 million bereaved young people. These are not small numbers, and Good Grief answered the call to support. So Good Grief started as an idea in 2004 with a group of concerned volunteers who wanted to ensure that New Jersey had ongoing, effective grief support services and education. And so we began our journey. The Good Grief Support Center opened on September 11th in 2007 at Christ Church of Summit, New Jersey, and it's pictured here on the left. The need was great. In 2009, Good Grief marked supporting our 100th family, which was a really big deal. I was looking into it. They even ran a newspaper article about it. It was huge. But to put that into perspective, we served 473 families in 2020 alone. So on the right, you'll see a photo from 2010 of Dylan and Luke Glasser receiving a key to what would be the future Morristown Good Grief Center on behalf of the Thomas Glasser Foundation. And that center became a reality. And you can see it here on the left. We have our Elm Street offices, and the need and response to this Morristown Center was tremendous. It required Good Grief to grow our programs each and every year. So in 2012, we responded to that emerging need of families traveling long distances to Morristown by bringing Good Grief programs to Princeton. And so 5 Mapleton became our second location. But beyond our nights of support, Good Grief also runs a grief expression summer camp for our kids. It's in person. It's an opportunity for them to do art, music, theater. We provide programmings in schools through our Good Grief Schools initiative. We work with the hospital and healthcare settings, corporations, and with the funeral industry. And we want to provide valuable training and professional development experiences like our yearly Spring Institute, as well as offer these free community webinars every month. We strive to continually bring the work we do outside of the walls of our 2 centers because we want to go where the grief is. We want to enable communities to support one another and build resilience together. I've talked a lot about grief, but what is grief? How would you describe grief? Feel free to pop it in there in the chat. If you were going to describe grief to somebody, what would you say? I'll give folks a moment to type. Sadness, yeah, some emotions there. Love that is lost. Yeah, and feel free to keep popping those in there. So we say grief is a multifaceted response to loss. Grief is a compilation of emotions and so much more. There's that emotional side, the intellectual side, the spiritual, the physical aspects of experiencing grief. And grief is a universal, natural, and healthy response. Grief is completely normal and good. Grief enacts a series of responses that help individuals adapt and rebuild after a loss. But we do know that the grieving process is often misunderstood. We also know that grievers feel unsupported. So this is from a nationwide study. It was by the New York Life Foundation, and it revealed that a majority reported it takes as many as 6 years to begin to feel like you're moving forward after experiencing a loss, but that support from family and from friends starts to disappear after about 3 months. So over time, that support does fade. People are great at showing up in the immediate time following a loss or following a death, but support very quickly starts to wane. Many times this is because other people have their own commitments and priorities. They may believe that the grievers would be harmed in some way just by bringing it up. I've heard folks say that they just don't know what to do or what to say to a person who is grieving, especially a child. And this underscores the deep need for a place like Good Grief, where we are normalizing talking about grief, grieving, and all of the emotions and responses that come with it. Our nights of support enable our children and families to no longer feel alone in their grief. But you don't have to take it from me. I have a few friends here who are going to join us and tell everyone about their experiences. So allow me to welcome some of our Good Grief participants and a Good Grief volunteer facilitator. Hi, everyone. Hello, hello. All right, so why don't we start with a few introductions. So Thomas, do you want to introduce yourself to the group first?
Yeah, sure. I'm Thomas. My dad died, and I've been coming to Good Grief for 10 years.
Thanks, Thomas. Ashley, Johnny, do you want to introduce yourselves to the group next?
I'm Ashley.
I'm Johnny.
Our mom died, and we've been coming to Good Grief, I think, for 4 years.
For 4 years. And then Ashley, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself to the group.
Sure, my name's Ashley, and I've been a facilitator at Good Grief since 2018.
Thank you so much. I really do appreciate all of you being here and sharing your experiences with Good Grief and on this really important day, Children's Grief Awareness Day. But before we dive in, we do want to take a moment to acknowledge what it was that brought you to Good Grief. So if you wouldn't mind, could you tell us a little bit about your person who died? And Ashley, I think we'll start with you and with Johnny.
So, like I said, our mom passed away. She was really cool. She did a lot with her family, like as much as she could, and she had a lot of fun.
Our mom passed away, and she was really fun, and she went out of her way to spend time with us and to play games with each other.
Thank you, Ashley and Johnny, for sharing a little bit about your mom and your memories. Thomas.
Yeah, my dad passed away, and he was like an outdoorsy kind of guy, and he likes spending time with us, teaching us stuff.
Thank you. Ashley.
Yeah, so what brought me to Good Grief is a random Google search. And I'm so happy that I found Good Grief. My parents died when I was younger, and there were no resources like Good Grief that were offered to me back then. It was something I didn't talk about at school, and I know how isolating that can be as a kid or even as an adult. So when I stumbled upon Good Grief, I knew that this was a mission that I really wanted to be a part of.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. So we want to spend a little bit of time looking at what your journeys of grief looked like. So thinking about what was it like for you when you first found Good Grief? And then also, in what ways has your grief experience changed over the years? And this one's just for the kids. Thomas, we'll start with you. What was it like for you when you first found Good Grief?
I don't really remember what it was like because I was 4.
And
it changed because I've seen people come and I've made friends with them, and and then they left, and I made new friends from there.
Oh, that's great. It sounds like it really gave you opportunities to build community and connections with peers. It's awesome. Ashley, Johnny.
So at first it was scary and nervous, and I was also very nervous to talk and to do with the activities that we were doing.
At first I was nervous, but I was able to make a bunch of friends and just to know, that the people were going through the same thing. Made it a lot easier.
Yeah. And then how did things change for you over your time that you've been involved? It sounds like you started off really nervous.
Not much has changed. It's something I still look forward to every time we go. So not much has changed, but for me at least.
It has kind of changed because at first I didn't know as much people until I started talking to them and doing activities together. So I started to make more friends.
That's great. Building that peer support, making connections through activities. Great. Thank you so much. So my next question, this one is for Thomas and for facilitator Ashley. Leave it to me to have two Ashleys in one set of panelists. So was there any memory or moment you had at Good Grief that you feel really captures your experience of our nights of support? So is there a memory or a moment that you might want to share? Thomas, we'll start with you.
I like met someone there and now we're like best friends. So like that like kind of just like a memory I have.
Yeah. Could you tell us a little bit more about that? Is there a story attached to how you guys kind of came together?
Not really. We just like played the same sport. So like I don't know, we started talking, like now we talk. So like
Great, building connections on common interests. Thank you, Thomas. Ashley, facilitator Ashley. I'm sorry, that is your new moniker. You are facilitator Ashley.
Different spellings, yeah. Yeah, so my first year as a facilitator, I was placed in the orange group, which is 6 to 9-year-olds. And these kids really knew how to have fun. There was always like a lot of energy. And so one night after an activity we were doing, we were in a really spirited game of playing monkey in the middle. And during this game, one participant did end up getting like visibly upset and like removed herself from the game. And my co-facilitator at the time went and checked on her, and she was missing her mom. And so to the credit of my co-facilitator, she asked her if she wanted to talk about this with the group as a whole, not just one-on-one with the facilitator, and she said yes. So I stopped the game and I told everyone that our friend really needs to share about her mom. And without even being asked twice, the kids just gathered around this big table that we had, this big round table, and they listened and they shared and they supported one another, and they needed very little prompting from the facilitators. It was just like such a special night of sharing that I got to witness. So that really captures it for me.
Incredible how the group can take care of each other in itself. Thank you. So through your nights of support, you've had these experiences, you've built bonds with other people, supporting each other, participating in these activities. And I'm wondering, this one's for the kids, what coping skills have you learned over your time at Good Grief to support yourself? What are some coping skills you've learned? I think Ashley, Johnny, we'll start with you.
I've learned to not be scared and to just speak out and have fun.
Oh, so you learned to use your voice.
Yeah.
I've learned to talk about my feelings and write them down, or go do something that I like, or go spend time with somebody who understands.
Yeah, those are all great. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. Thomas, how about you? What do you do when you feel yourself feeling stressed or sad to cope?
I learned how to draw and stuff, like draw just anything, and like write like stories and stuff, and like do stuff that like can like get my mind off of it.
Oh, thank you. And I just want to let folks know I put an offer in the chat, but in case you didn't see it, if you have any specific questions, whether they're for the kids, for me, or for our facilitator, you could put them in the chat or in the Q&A box, and we will see if we are able to get to them in this session. So next question, kind of a big question, and facilitator Ashley, I'll start with you. What do you wish other people knew about grief? Oh, you're on mute.
Well, when I tell people that I spend my Wednesday nights working with grieving children, the majority of people say that must be so sad. And sure, there are sad moments and heavy nights, but it isn't all sad. There's so much like laughter and hope that fills like these grief centers. And it's such like an inspirational place to be. And these kids are forming new identities and building supportive relationships with people that really understand what they're going through. And I think that's important to note, that it's not always sad at these centers. There's a lot of fun that happens too.
Yeah, I appreciate that. There's joy. There's so many feelings that I don't think other people expect to hear when you talk about this kind of work. So Ashley and Johnny, what do you wish other people knew about grief?
I wish people knew that grief is okay and it's totally normal in life.
I wish people knew that that grief is understandable by many people.
Yeah, grief is normal. Grief is universal. Thank you. How about you, Thomas?
I like wish people knew that like grief like just never goes away. Like it's like there, but like we just learn how to like deal with it better.
Yeah, grief is a lifelong process. It's not this linear thing that you get to the end of, but it becomes part of you, part of integrating that loss into your life. So for my next question, this is for everyone. Can you think of one way that people can support a child, specifically a child who is grieving? Ashley, Johnny, we'll start with you.
One way that people can help grieving kids is that you can ask them what is wrong and support them, and you can find a way to make them happy.
Yeah, so talking to them.
One way you can support grieving kids is understanding what they're going through, not necessarily about the subject, but just being there to listen to them and help them if they need it.
Yeah, so I'm hearing, be an empathic presence, listen, try to understand and connect with them. Yeah. How about you, Thomas? What's one way that you can think of that people can support a child who's grieving?
One way that I can think of is like to like not be like always asking them if they're like okay. Cause like sometimes I could like make it worse. Cause like constantly like texting them or like asking them if they're okay. Just like.
Yeah, what would you think people should do instead? Because they might have this instinct to keep texting, keep asking. Do you have a preference or an alternative?
Not really, just like, I don't know. It might be hard, but just like, like when like the right time to ask is.
Yeah. Each situation is different. Every moment is different. I get that. How about you, Ashley? What's a way that you can think of that people can support a child who's grieving? You've been in that seat.
Yeah, I think, from my perspective, one way to support a grieving child is to ask them about their person who died. A child has like very limited memories of the person who died. And the way that we keep those memories alive are by continually sharing those stories and those memories. So that's one way I can think of to support a grieving child.
Yeah, and many times folks will actively avoid those conversations because I don't know if they're afraid or they just don't want to address it or they're worried it might bring more pain, but you're right. they benefit from that, from being able to remember, from being able to talk about their person.
Yes.
So Ashley, how long did you say you've been part of Good Grief now? It's been a few years, right?
It's been a few years. I started as a greeter in 2017, and then I did my training in 2018. And I've been with all age groups from orange 6-year-olds all the way to the adult groups at Good Grief. And I've even participated as a facilitator and a team coordinator for the in-community programs in Jersey City and Newark. So.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome. So could you tell us a little bit, because everyone might not know, but what is a greeter? What does a greeter do and what's their role?
A greeter greets the families at the beginning of the night when they arrive and just sees how they're arriving and gets them pizza and talks about the memory wall with them. Very limited role, but it's a good way to like get your feet wet and see the center and get a taste of what it might be like as a facilitator.
Yeah, and then you said a little bit about in community. Could you tell folks a little bit about that?
Sure. There's satellite centers in Newark and Jersey City. And originally it was in Jersey City Medical Center. It was like a pop-up program, also in some charter schools and Montessori schools in Newark and Jersey City. And yeah, we would just go there and work with kids that really needed our services. So.
Great. And so what is it that keeps you coming back and getting involved in all of these different ways?
I really think it's just the growth that I see in the kids. This program and the activities that we do are really impactful. And kind of how Johnny and Ashley were saying when they first started at Good Grief, they were really nervous. And I don't love, but it's cool to see how a kid comes so nervous and like a little reserved, and through the course of the year, they feel like more in control of their own grief story and can tell me about their person who died or tell their friends about their person who died. And then when a new participant arrives, they feel like they can show them the ropes a bit. And that's always powerful to see. So I think just seeing the growth in the kids and how much they benefit from this program.
Thank you. So again, just want to offer to those of you that are attending live, if you have a question for Good Grief Kids or for a Good Grief facilitator, feel free to pop them in the chat or put them in the Q&A, and we'll see if we're able to answer. Or if you have a question for me, whether it's about Good Grief or Good Grief schools, always happy to answer. Just give folks a moment if they're thinking of some questions. So is there anything that you all wish I had asked you, or anything that you would like to say about your Good Grief experience?
I'll say there.
All right.
We need more facilitators. So yes, feel free to reach out to Evelyn if you're at all interested or know anyone that's interested in being a facilitator.
Yes, we always need more facilitators in Princeton, in Morristown. We have a training coming up very soon that you can sign up for at either center. So be sure to reach out if you're interested. So I guess if there's no questions, I'll keep my eye on the chat box and on the Q&A and see if anything else comes up. But if not, I'll move on with the presentation. I'm going to show a short video about Good Grief and then talk about some ways that people can potentially get involved with us if you're interested. Let me share my screen. Oh, there's no volume.
I'm Allie.
I'll start it over.
Maddie and my dad passed away.
My name is Lisa. My husband Chris died.
I'm Allie and my dad died.
I'm Sherry and my husband Howie died.
I'm Jenny and my mom passed away.
My name is Eliana. My mom passed away. My name is Gabriella and my dad died.
John Clark was 43. He was my best friend. He was a great guy. His friends, his family, everyone was just drawn to him. He had one of those big personalities, had a huge laugh. When Matthew and I came to Good Grief, we came for 4 years, and the best way for me to define where we are today is when I look at someone else who was where we were, you know, in the first year after John died. And we still miss him.
People often think that this work is sad and depressing, but this is a place that is full of so much joy and laughter, and kids being kids really rebuilding their childhoods.
When they're out there in the world, in school and everything like that, they're different in a significant way from a lot of their classmates. And when they come here, all of them, who are all different in the same way, are not different at all. You can't be here for an hour on any given night of support without seeing the need for the place.
There's like a fierce sense of community here, and it goes from the kids to the parents in the adult groups to the facilitators themselves. The sense of community is something that will draw anyone in, and you'll want to stay here because of that.
Sometimes you have really serious sessions where everyone just kind of isn't joking and you're just talking about the nitty and gritty, but other times you find yourself just hysterically laughing without any control.
There is joy. And when I tell people what I do, they go, oh, I don't think I could do that. It's just so sad. And I go, oh my gosh, it's so joyful.
About 8 months passed by, and I realized and started to see the doors were closing in their bedrooms. Everybody was kind of siloed. Nobody really was talking. And when we were, all of us, I'll say for all of us, we were all on each other's nerves and just not understanding how to deal with the emotions and the loss. You start to feel like you belong on the island of misfit toys, so to speak. But it's really not like that. For me, it's therapeutic. I did therapy, and I'm not talking bad about it. I loved it. But I got so much more out of Good Grief. I'm getting so much more. And to have that and not have a bill come to you, it's just amazing.
One of the biggest frustrations to me is the fact that we can't reach everyone that we need to reach. The statistics are staggering about how many children suffer the loss of a parent or sibling. And for us to continue to grow as an organization, we need others to understand the dire need for an organization like this. We look and say our children are our future. Well, children that lose a parent lose a big part of their foundation.
Good Grief is a place that no matter where you come from, no matter what brings you to us, you will be cared for and supported and carried each step of the way for as long as you need us, for as long as it takes until you feel whole again.
The whole family dynamic is different and is trying to find its way and adjust itself now that one person is missing. Without Good Grief, I'd probably be lost, and so would my family.
This is some place that I truly, in my heart of hearts, know that has made and is making us better prepared for every day that we are without my wife.
We see ourselves as teaching children resilience, helping them to remember, and equipping them with all of the tools and resources that they need in order to go on living their lives meaningfully.
I miss the most her perfume. It smelled really good. And her eyes and her smile. She never yelled. She was always so calm and all that. And I miss that. In heaven, she's probably looking down and saying, that's my husband who's the best. Those are my kids who are the best. Toughing this out and going to Good Grief, being men and doing this.
You're a lot like Daddy in your personality. This is the part that you probably you feel like you don't know. And I know it just because you're a kind person, and Daddy was a really kind person. So you're a lot like him that way. He hates blankets.
Good Grief is amazing. Good Grief is supportive. Good Grief is powerful.
Good Grief is love.
Good Grief is indescribable.
And I see there's a question in the chat. If any of you feel comfortable answering, but someone asked, what stands out to the panelists about the video? Does that resonate with you in any way? I won't put anyone on the spot. If any of you feel like answering, feel free to come off of mute.
Well, what stands out to me is that, I mean, the whole video is really like inspiring, and I feel like none of it they were lying about. It's completely like people can be serious, but they can also have the best time. And I liked how it said you can go for there as long as you need or as long as you want.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Any others? What stands out to you about the video?
I really like watching the families like give feedback about how this has been really helping them. Because as a facilitator, you don't always get to meet the full family and get the feedback. So that's always good to hear that what we're doing is helping.
Yeah, what you're doing is helping, what you're doing is making a difference. Would any of you be able to speak about some of the activities that you've done? Were there any activities that you've done at Good Grief that you've really liked or that you remember super well for any reason?
I like to do my stories to tell about how it was like when your person died, or what it was like that you did some stuff that was fun with them.
I really like doing when we make like the hats for them, or when we like one year we created these like memory boxes, and on it we had like the shows that we watch, the books that we read, places we go that all remind us of that person, and then we could just put notes in it or write what we were feeling in it.
I really like doing the hats.
How about you, facilitator Ashley? Do you have any activities that you really love from the facilitator side?
Yeah, so there's a Good Grief talent show every year that I really enjoy.
I see some smiles. I see some smiles.
So my first time doing the Good Grief talent show, the kids know about the talent show in advance, so they have time to prepare. And I had an 8-year-old who was going to tell jokes as her talent. And she was very nervous. And I was nervous for her because, you know, jokes can be hit or miss. And so I asked, you know, why did you choose this as your talent for tonight? And she said, because her dad told the best jokes. So now I was even more invested, and she mustered up the courage and she went up there and she nailed it. And she got laughs and she was so proud of herself. And I could see that, like, that really, in that moment, she really felt connected to her dad. So that was special.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for sharing that special memory. I saw some smiles when you said talent show from some of the others. Anyone participate in a talent show? You have a talent? No, they're like, no way, lady, no way. Oh. So again, the chat box is open for any Q&A, any questions, whether it's about our nights of support, being a facilitator at Good Grief Schools, always happy to answer. If there aren't any, I can start to move on a little bit more with our presentation. We'll just pause for a moment to see if there's any burning questions from our friends out there in Zoom. I see. Any advice for a young child who loses a close friend? I'll give you all a moment to think about that, but if any of you want to answer that question, do you have advice that you would give for a young child who's lost a close friend. I have some advice that I would give the adult in this situation. And I can actually talk about that in just a moment. But if you were maybe a kid talking to another kid, what advice would you give them?
I tell her to not forget about them, to like integrate like person's life into yours.
Yeah, don't forget about them. Let me share my screen because I feel like my next screen actually goes really, really well with this question. So I do have for you a few tips to support a grieving child. And grief comes to us in many different forms as a result of many different losses. But with a kid, you'll want to make yourself available. You'll want to check in regularly, but as you saw from Thomas, maybe not too regularly. Don't constantly text them. Are you okay? I guess you could, you could do a little bit too much. So you'll just have to feel it out. Every situation is different. The way people experience grief is so unique and so subjective. No two people grieve the same, even in the same household, even twins, it doesn't matter. Grief is a completely unique, totally subjective experience. But the first step is to make yourself available and communicate that you are available to the child. Make them aware that you're willing to be present for them. And I think a big one is to withhold from the need to fix it for a child. So if you have a grieving child in your life, and in the moment, you're trying to find the perfect thing to say or do that could make it all better, I just want to remove that burden from you right now. You have to withhold from the need to fix it, because there is nothing that you can say or do that will very quickly fix things for this child. So the important thing is for you to be there, to be present for another person in their pain, but you don't need to fix it. And express your love and care. You can let them know that this is something very difficult that they're going through, and you want to support them, and that you care about them, and that you love them, and that you want to be there for them. We also recommend using clear, concrete language to explain death and loss, especially to young kids. We at Good Grief, we say death, dead, died, and person who died. We don't sugarcoat it. We don't use euphemisms or any kind of confusing language. People can lean towards that sort of vocalizing around death and dying because it feels more comfortable to put it in certain ways or to avoid it altogether. We want to use clear, concrete language to explain death and loss, especially to young children. It takes away any of that potential for magical thinking or things like that. And we say person who died because people who die that have all sorts of relationships in their life. So we don't want to assume that it's always a loved one. So dead, death, died, and person who died. We also want to encourage that you empower the griever with some decision making. That'll aid them in reclaiming their agency. So you can give them some options, some ways that you would be able to be available for them, but let them have some choice, empower them. You can even ask, I can imagine that this is very difficult for you. What can I do to support you? They may not know, but you've given them the opportunity to ask. And then we heard this even from our panel, ask about memories and other continuing bonds. Talking about their person who died, it's not going to harm them in any way. It might bring them joy to remember the good things. And remember that grief is a lifelong process. It is not a linear from A to B. There's no moment that you get over it, but grief is a lifelong, non-linear process. So I'll just pause there to see if there are any other questions for our panel. Let me check the chat and the Q&A. But if you have any questions for our Good Grief kids, for our Good Grief facilitator, feel free to pop them in there. And if not, I will move on to ways that you can help. So how can you help? You've heard some good things from our kids. You've heard some good things from our facilitator. I mean, one of the things that you could do to help is to share our resources. And you can do that by going on our website. You could go onto our website, good-grief.org/resources, and you can find a ton of free things on there. You can find links to books, you can find handouts, tip sheets, access to different webinars coming up. All sorts of things are there on our website for you to share with your schools, with your friends, with your community. Just free and out there for anyone to utilize. Another thing that you can do to support is to refer families to our grief support programs. So we're running both in-person and virtual grief support groups for families. We start as young as age 3, we go all the way through young adulthood, and we also support the primary caregivers. So if you're looking for more information about our programs in Princeton and Morristown, you can check out our website, good-grief.org. And then Ashley made a nice plug for this before, but volunteering with Good Grief. I mean, as you heard, volunteering can take a lot of different forms. You know, Ashley started as a greeter, very important role, making people feel welcome. When we bring back pizza dinners, the greeters will also be key once we incorporate that back into our evenings again. We're sad that there's no pizza currently with COVID, but it will come back. But volunteers really are the ones that make all of this possible. We have so many amazing volunteer opportunities through all of our programs, whether it's events, fundraising, education. If you're interested in learning more, reach out to us. We can get you connected. We have our next volunteer facilitator training coming up in January. So if you've ever considered making a direct impact in the lives of grieving children and families, come to our 4-day training. You could see what it's all about. I guarantee you, it will be a life-changing experience. It's an excellent 4 days. And if you come to one in Princeton, you can hang out with me. And you could join Good Grief schools. So we provide fee-for-service virtual trainings. We have curriculum that is also online, and we equip schools to deliver grief support groups. So much like what we do here in our Nights of Support, but in the school communities to support children who have had any kind of death. It doesn't have to be a recent death. It doesn't have to be a parent, caregiver, or sibling, just a death that is affecting the child, and they're seeking that support at school. We also have another program called Roots to Resilience. That's a resilience building social and emotional learning program. That one, you could reach out to entire grades of a school, and we also train educators to implement that. We do professional development, parent education. But you could go to our website and reach out and learn more about how to bring the programs to your schools. And then fundraising. So we have so many events. We have a 5K in June, which is really fun, with a gala in the fall. And that's how we're able to raise funds to continue our free and unlimited peer support programs. Many of our supporters make us part of their annual giving as well, which includes Giving Tuesday. You might have heard of it. It's coming up. So there's some of that peer-to-peer fundraising that can happen on social media. I am no expert, but I did hear that Facebook is matching some funds up to a certain amount. So, but whatever it is that you're able to do, every little bit will help us achieve our mission of supporting grieving children and families. And you can also watch this documentary. So Beautiful Something Left Behind. And MTV and Paramount Plus have made it available to the public today. So if you've been debating, oh, I don't know, do I want Paramount Plus? Do I want to do the 7-day free trial and I might forget to cancel it? You don't have to worry about that today. I can pop a link in the chat in just a moment. that will get you directly to it. And it's a great day to watch it today on Children's Grief Awareness Day. And you can understand all about good grief and childhood bereavement. I see something in the chat. Ashley's in the movie. Ashley, are you famous? I want to hear about that. Well, let me just finish talking about this and then I have some questions for you maybe. But we do have more webinars coming up. We have our Continuing Bonds webinar. This one will be in the evening from 7 to 8 p.m. with Lisa Williams of What's Your Grief? And then Thursday, we're doing a Lunch and Learn Thursday, January 20th, Growing Up and Grieving at Work. And it should be really, really an interesting time. So let me pop some of those links in the chat for you all so that way you can access everything. So here is the link for Beautiful Something Left Behind. Ashley, what was it like being part of a movie?
I'll be honest, I don't remember. But what I do, it was fun.
And then I'm also going to put in the chat, these are the registration links to our upcoming webinars. Again, anyone who attends a live webinar will receive a certificate of attendance for your time. We want to honor your time and be able to send you that as a fillable PDF. Continuing Bonds around the holidays is coming up December 2nd. Grief at Work will be January 20th. And then I'm also going to put in the chat a survey. We'd love to hear what you thought, what this experience was like for you. And I'll start to land this plane on this experience. I'll do a little bit of a closing ritual. Again, if there's any other questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. My panel, while I have you, I think I'm going to just take a quick picture, if that's okay with you all. So get ready to smile. You ready? 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So if you know anything about good grief, we're all about ritual. We have opening rituals, closing rituals. We love to check in. We love to check out. And just no experience is complete without honoring that transition and honoring that time. So let me share my screen here. So I want to wrap up this session from a place of immense gratitude for everyone's time acknowledging Children's Grief Awareness Day. Thank you to our families, our funders, our schools, and our partners. But an extra big thank you to our panelists today, who I think really helped bring to life the work of good grief way better than I ever could have done alone by myself in a webinar. So I appreciate you all so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But like I said, we like to end all of our experiences with something called a closing ritual. And rituals serve the function of establishing a sense of community and belonging through tradition. They also help in managing transitions like ours this evening as we move away from this experience and back into the rest of our day. And so I would like to read this quote. It's from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. You might have heard of her. Most people recognize her for developing the 5 stages of grief when she studied patients who had received a terminal diagnosis. She was doing really groundbreaking work when no one was really talking about, let alone writing about death and dying. But just want to leave you with these words and with these thoughts. So she said, the most beautiful people we have known are those who have known defeat, known suffering, known struggle, known loss, and have found their way out of the depths. These persons have an appreciation, a sensitivity, and an understanding of life that fills them with compassion, gentleness, and a deep, loving concern. Beautiful people do not just happen. And you all did not just happen. So thank you, all of you beautiful people who joined us live this evening. Thank you to everyone who's watching us later on YouTube. And thank you everyone for your support on Children's Grief Awareness Day. Panelists, anything you want to say before we let you go and say goodnight to our friends? No. Well, again, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Those of you who are watching live, you will be receiving your PD within the next day, so probably tomorrow. It will be coming directly to the email that you used to register. Again, gratitude for you all. Thank you to our panelists, and goodbye and good night, everyone.